Hello, my name is Matt, and I run a tour company called Fun London Tours, and I've been going for 7 years now. We really sort of focus on more of the kind of unusual aspects of London, so telling the history, but also leaving. Hopefully, people leave our tours with a smile on their face, having heard a few interesting and fun stories and anecdotes. So we lead unusual, quirky tours around London, but we also do tours which are focused on the principal locations, more for sort of first time or second time visitors. And what I've decided to do over the next few weeks, while us tour guides are being confined to our residences, is to lead a few tours virtually and talk about some of the more unusual and fun stories which sometimes crop up within our walks. So today is much more of a sort of a principal location that we all be completely familiar with, and is an incredible story. It's the first news story I remember as a child, and dates back to 1982 and took place at Buckingham Palace. So today's strangest tale is all about somebody who managed to break into the palace. Now, this has been done over on many occasions actually throughout the years. And we'll have another little story about another one of the break ins at some other point. But this one was around a guy called Michael Fagan. And Michael Fagan was a person who was down on his luck, and he had just lost his job. His wife and kids had just left. And so he was really going through a very difficult time in his life, going through effectively a breakdown. And he said that he was just discovered himself at one point wandering around the streets in central London and really didn't know what he was doing. But he climbed over the fence of Buckingham Palace, somehow managed to get inside the building and set the alarms off. Now you think with the principal palace of the monarch, that it'd be very, very well guarded, and it is, of course. But on this occasion, he managed to get in. The alarms were set off, and it was a new security system. So supposedly the security guards thought, do you know what? It must be malfunctioning. No one's going to break into the palace right now. So they turned the alarms off. Meanwhile, Michael Fagan walked freely around the palace, started opening doors, looking around, seeing what he could do, looking at the pictures, and eventually found himself in Prince Charles's office. Whereupon he found some of his white wine, which apparently was Californian white wine, glugged some of this down, ate some of his cheese and biscuits, and then took this booziness over to the Queen's throne room and sat on one of Her Majesty the Queen's thrones. Don't worry, she's got a lot more thrones in total, but he did sit on one of the Queen's thrones. At this point, he was getting a bit tired. He thought, well, I've had my fun. Let's get out. So he managed to get out of the palace. He may well have been seen by a few people walking around, but they must have thought, well, he must be someone who's associated with the building. It's a huge building, 775 rooms. You're not going to be expected to know everybody who's working or operating in and around the building. So he got out, and the following month, he decided to do it again. But on this occasion, he did it very early in the morning, and it was much more premeditated according to his testimony. So this occasion, July of 1982, he went back inside the palace, went over the fence, climbed some drain pipe, went through a half-open window. It was 7:15 in the morning. He starts wandering around. Now on this occasion, he's on the right-hand side of the palace. And the right-hand side on the back is where the Queen and Prince Philip have their 12 rooms, their private chambers. So Fagan, I don't imagine, was aware of this, but he starts opening doors in this particular area. And eventually he opens one of those doors, goes inside, and finds the Queen in bed. Not in the same bed as Prince Philip, but we'll leave that at that point. But yeah, the Queen was in bed. He then sat on the Queen's bed, and at this point, the whole story blurs into what actually happened. There's lots of different various stories that he's given at different points in his life. But the original story was that he sat on the Queen's bed. The Queen was thinking, okay, this crazy man is sat on my bed. What do I do? So she was trying to raise some kind of alarm, but nobody would come. Maybe the alarm system didn't work. So Fagan and the Queen started talking about their respective families and about, domesticity and, all the things that they have in common. The Queen, is a master of small talk. She spent her entire life speaking to people she has absolutely zero interest in and pretending to be interested. So they sat for a while, supposedly 10 minutes, until eventually Michael Fagan, who'd, perhaps had a few drinks already, says to the Queen, do you know what? Do you mind if I have a light for my cigarette? The Queen says, well, do you know what, Michael? I don't smoke, but I'm sure I can find a light for you. So she said, do you mind if I quickly make a quick phone call? So she picks up the phone, makes a call to security and says, would you mind bringing a light for my cigarette? And so they realised that something was untoward. The Queen is not a smoker. And so what happened was that they stormed into the room, found Michael Fagan sat on the bed speaking to the Queen, rugby tackled him down to the floor. And then, of course, being very British, we decided to give him a light for a cigarette. At this point, this was a terrible breach of security. Very quickly, Michael Fagan was going to be held on trial, so he was hauled to the Central Criminal Court of the Old Bailey, near to St. Paul's Cathedral. But the problem was, at that point, strangely enough, it was a legal grey area whether he could break and enter into a royal residence. And so, Michael Fagan's lawyer was pleaded temporary insanity. The only thing that he could be charged with was stealing half a bottle of wine on the first visit. So Michael Fagan spent a while at Her Majesty's pleasure in an institute for the mentally unwell, but not too long later he was back out and telling about his story. The following year he appeared on BBC TV on Top of the Pops, the most popular music show of the day, singing a cover, ironically, of God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols. And he is still somebody you can find out all sorts of things about online. Personally, I have been to the British Library and I've checked out all the news stories at the time. I still have cuttings from that time, or photocopies of the cuttings of that time. Incredible story. So I do suggest that the security around Buckingham Palace is stronger these days, and the legal grey area has been tied up. Yes, an amazing story of Michael Fagan breaking into Buckingham Palace in 1982.